in any historical record of a church in the first century. We do find some heretical sects in the end of the second century, the Marcionites doing something strange like this, but it was an aberrant behavior, nobody else was doing it. We don't find any pagan religions even following this kind of a practice. It's just the New Testament, in fact the whole Bible is completely silent. Our historical records are silent about this kind of activity. So we don't have any historical record to go on to base this kind of a practice. Historically, there's a huge problem. Theologically, there's a huge problem. You can tell why, can't you? This would seem to imply that someone who died in a lost condition could be saved if someone else that was living just got baptized for them. At least if we're understanding what this means in Paul's mind. So, everywhere else, Paul believes that we are saved by grace through personal faith, personal response to the gospel, not by someone baptizing us in proxy. So, let's do a quick survey of some of the possible interpretations that have been offered for this verse. Some people take the word baptism and they don't understand it as water baptism. They understand it as the baptism of suffering. Just like we have in Luke 12:50 or Mark 10:38. There the word baptism is really identified with the suffering of Christ. He said, I have a baptism to undergo, how distressed I am until it is accomplished. He's talking about the cross. And so they say, okay, well let's look at it that way. What could this verse possibly mean if that's what he meant by baptism? These people are baptized for the dead. They suffer. They go through this baptism of suffering for the dead. So some have offered this. It means that they were being baptized into the ranks of the dead by martyrdom. So by being martyred, they were being immersed into, through suffering, the ranks of the dead. Okay? Others said, no, this means that the apostles were being destroyed by their labors on behalf of the lost, the dead, spiritually dead. You see how many ways this thing can go? So they were wasting away through their labors like Paul, his beatings and imprisonments and all the things he went through. So he was going through a baptism of suffering for spiritually dead people. All right? Others say, well, let's take the word for. How could that be understood? Does it mean always in behalf of? And the word is huper, the Greek word, and it has a whole range of meanings, possible meanings. And so they say, well, this perhaps means that they were being baptized over the dead, or over the graves of the dead. I'm not sure why anybody would want to be baptized over the grave of a dead person, but that is one suggestion. Others saying they were baptized with death before their eyes. In other words, with a view towards their own death, they were getting water baptized to prepare for their death. A third one. It means that these dead people are Christians, and those being baptized are new converts, and these new converts are being baptized with a view toward their being reunited with their departed loved ones. Do you follow that explanation? No? Okay. They're being baptized with a view towards being with the dead. Maybe their parents or people who have gone on to be with Jesus already. So they're being baptized for the prospect of being reunited with the dead. Okay? Another one. It means because of instead of for. That is one of the possible ranges of meaning. So they're being baptized because of the dead, meaning that some of these Christians who have died have led to the conversion of new believers. So they're getting baptized because of the testimony and the witness of people who are now dead. Can you follow that one? I'm not saying we're agreeing with all these, but just kind of to understand what people are suggesting. Another one, they were baptized in reference to death, simply meaning that they believe the symbolic meaning of baptism is to die, be buried, and resurrected with Christ. And so they're baptized for the dead simply means they're baptized with reference to death, burial, and resurrection. And then a final one under this section is they were being baptized to fill up the ranks of the dead martyrs. In other words, people were dying for Christ, and so these people were being baptized for the dead, so that they would take the place of those dead people who had died for Christ. So as soon as some people died for Christ, others filled up the ranks. They were being baptized for them. And then here's another possible interpretation. The dead refer to the soon-to-be dead bodies of the Christians themselves, and that they were being baptized for the part of them that was dying and would soon be a corpse. They're baptizing for their soon-to-be dead body. So I've probably given you about 12 possible interpretations. What do we got rolling down here?
I was trying not to watch the video.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't know you were doing a video.
That's okay. So we've got probably here, not 40, but about a dozen different options. What's the best one? Is there a best one? Well, one of the principles of hermeneutics is that we try to look for the natural and plain meaning of the text. Instead of assigning it a symbolic or figurative meaning, just what does it mean at face value? That's probably going to be, in most cases, the correct interpretation of the text. Yeah.
I was thinking of, like, there's the question of if the dead are not raised, then that means Jesus wasn't raised, and on behalf of the dead, could that be like, or for the dead, could this dead be Jesus? Like people are baptized for Jesus?
Oh, okay. Well, there's another one. You just added to our list, Nolan. That could be another one. They're being baptized for Christ. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if we just took that natural, plain hermeneutical principle and applied it here, I would go away thinking some people were getting baptized in proxy for people who had died. Now, I know there's problems with that because it doesn't seem to match Paul's theology, and Paul doesn't condemn it. But that may not be an overruling objection, as we'll get to that in just a minute. That may not be something that overrules that particular possibility. So, if some people were getting baptized for people who are now dead, who were these people who were now dead? And again, different suggestions are offered there. Some say, well, these were believers who didn't have the opportunity to get baptized and died before they could get baptized, and so people were standing in their place being baptized for them. Others say that, well, these were interested people in the gospel. They were soon to be believers. They were on their way. They were in sort of a catechismic process, but they died before they could complete it and get baptized, and so now someone's getting baptized in their place. Others say, well, this is the family members of believers that have died. And so the family members getting baptized in the place of that one who has died. We don't know. He doesn't tell us here at all. My hunch is that when Paul was with them in Corinth, they talked about this. Because how else could he just throw it out there and expect them to understand what he's talking about? All of them knew what was going on. And they had had discussions about this, so Paul didn't have to go into detail about the situation. So this may not have even been going on in Corinth. It may have been some phenomena that Paul mentioned that was going on in some other part of the world, a strange, aberrant thing taking place. Just because Paul mentions it here and doesn't condemn it doesn't mean that he agrees with it. And notice that he says those and they. It's not we. It's not you. It's not the church that's doing this. It's some group that's following some strange, aberrant practice for baptizing for the dead.